It's week 3 now of our first session. So you are in the week in which you have a very lengthy video to watch. So there's not going to be a PowerPoint today. I'm just going to go through our usual looking at what's due this week, looking at what to look at for next week, and a little bit of content because this happens to also be a topic that a lot of folks have challenges with nonviolent communication, and so I want to make sure you have the opportunity to kind of practice that skill. So, if you haven't watched Marshall Rosenberg's video, I'm going to go hop into week 3 modules here. But if you haven't watched it yet, you should probably pause this video and go back and watch that first. It's definitely integral to the rest of the course. It's something that is a very important tool to have in your toolkit, I think. So take some time, watch it, get some popcorn out. It's definitely a lengthier one, but it's worth it. You can find your video here, the next page. These are the 3 assignments. We'll come back to this, but you can find the video here. I'm pretty sure it's 3 hours long. Yep, 3 hours and 5 minutes. So it's definitely a very lengthy watch. You can break it up into a few days. Like I said in last week's video, there are parts of it that are very antiquated. There are parts that definitely get under people's feathers. So keep that in mind as you're watching it. He's one of the foremost thinkers in the area of nonviolent communication, or was because he has passed, but he's one of the pioneers. And so we're really hearing it from the mouth of one of the first minds to think about this type of communication. And so it's really important to hear it from him, even though some of the references that he makes and some of the ways in which he presents information is dated. So take what you can from it, leave the rest. But in the meantime, we're going to go back and look at the other things that are due for this week. So if you haven't watched this video, stop our video now and go back and watch it and come back to us later. All right. So if we're going to go into this week, you have a few things to read and watch. You do have a discussion post around nonviolent communication. Asks you to kind of play with the skill, come up with an example. You have your small group meeting and your process note. So it's nothing you haven't seen before. Your small group meeting is a little bit more it's a little bit more involved than last week. So you're going to want to look here and look at your prompt. You're actually going to do an activity where you're using nonviolent communication and practice it. And so you guys can use those things as a way to practice that skill. We're also going to do that today in this video because nonviolent communication is a bit equation based. And by that I mean it's like formulaic. You have, which you should know by now because if you're still watching this video, you should have seen the Marshall Rosenberg's video. But it's kind of like a formula in which you put into place, this is what I'm feeling when I observe this, and it doesn't meet my need for this, and do you think you might be able to X, Y, Z? So we're going to practice that today with some examples that aren't ours. So you might have noticed when I posted this video, there are also 3 YouTube links there. And those YouTube links lead to small clips from shows or movies the head of a conflict. So they all show, obviously in shows and movies, there's going to be a lot of lead up information that you don't have. But all of those clips show what happens when that conflict comes to a head and how those folks involved kind of navigate it and maybe don't use it as appropriately. Sorry, now you're with me. And so I'm going to want you to watch those, and we're going to kind of use those conflicts as an ability to frame that skill set, that skill, and try and figure out what we would do using a nonviolent communication as opposed to the ways in which they went through with it. And so I'm going to pause this right now and give you a moment. If you could watch each of those, there's 3 clips. None of them are more than 3 minutes long. Some of them are vastly shorter. And we're going to come back and talk about what we would do in that situation to use the framework involved. All were a little bit at my mercy because I got to tell you, I'll show you clips of things that I enjoyed from being youth in the 90s. So that first clip was from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The second one was from Friends, and the third one was from Harry Potter. But the first one with Will Smith and Hillary, whose name escapes me, but Will and Hillary, the backstory is they bring somebody that their father or uncle had dismissed in court, so essentially fired, and they brought him on to a television show to give him a platform in which he used to rail the uncle. And so in this situation, we can use this formula, which I found this little graphic, which honestly I would tweak a little. It just says, when you describe that action, I feel there should be an observed part of that too. So instead of saying like in this situation, when you bring someone on the show, you would say when I see you bring someone on the show, because it makes it more yours. The experience of yours is what you're concerned about. So you can't control other people, right? But you can say that this is my experience and it makes me feel this way. Do you think you could help me? And people who care about you will try, hopefully, depending on what you're asking. So in this situation, I want you to think about and pause this video what you would say if you were Uncle Phil in this format. I'm going to pause the video. Hopefully you will do the same, and then come back with an example I might use just to help. Sometimes there's these charts all over the internet, and so I think the biggest mistake people make when they do nonviolent communication strategies is they use words that aren't necessarily feelings. So a lot of folks end up saying things like I feel attacked or I feel left out, and those aren't necessarily feelings. They're not emotions. They're verbs. So when I say I feel attacked, you're telling somebody else you're doing something that's attacking me, as opposed to I feel scared, because that's an emotion that's totally on my own. A good way to think of it is if you were in a vacuum, could you feel that feeling from something else? You don't want to put the responsibility on another person because you can't control other people. At the same point, you want to get your feelings and emotions conveyed. So there's charts like this pretty much everywhere. I'm going to leave it up so that we can kind of use it in our framework for our Dr. Phil, for Uncle Phil exercise and what his response should be. I hope you've had an opportunity to put some thoughts together for Uncle Phil, give him a little bit more of a platform. What do you feel like? And granted, this is a video that I'm pre-recording, so you can't respond to me. But I think for me, what I would say, and my two, I think, easiest contenders would be the feeling of being hurt. So if you're feeling hurt by something, or you're feeling either hurt or angry, those are probably the 2 places I think I would go if this had happened to me. So you'll see on their angry column, there's a lot of indignant, irate, livid, outraged. I personally feel like outrage would be the best fit here. In pain, I typically gravitate towards hurt, but hurt I think is a good one for us here. So hurt being the feeling emotion we're using, we're going to go back to our little framework here. And we're going to use the version I would think, just because I want to do the best practices version if we can. And we're going to say something to the effect of, when I heard that person using the platform of your show to defame me, I felt hurt. And I feel hurt because I have a need for safety. Other words I've used here besides just safety, you could have used compassion or consideration. I have a need for community. But I think in that moment, if I were Uncle Phil and it being family members, I would think my sense of stability in the family would feel uh, shaken. So, and there's a need for trusting, and I think there was a trust broached there. So you can choose the words that you feel like would make sense based on your perspective, because not everyone's going to experience that situation the same way. So choose the words that you feel most suited to, but that is what I would choose. And then you have to think of a request. Would you consider um, letting me know if there's going to be some conflict of interest in which uh, people that you're going to bring onto your show, or if I'm going to, or if you're going to bring someone on the show who feels negatively about me, so that I can prepare. That way, you still feel safe. The other person still has the ability to do their job, but you can continue through. Now we're going to do it for the other two. So the second scenario is from, which one did I do? Friends. Oh my gosh, Friends. This Friends one is something that I think a lot of people experience, and I think it was a very good clip because it's much more like nobody has a television show in which they can show folks who are going to defame their family members. It's not like a realistic scenario, but the Friends scenario is one that I think most of us have gone through, in which someone has a lot of feelings and the other person is doing their own thing, and there's just a direct conflict between the two. This is a situation in which I don't think anyone is right or wrong, you know. And so what we could do is we could really pick either person and do this for. Ross has some genuine feelings here, as does Rachel. So to put the scenario in, Ross got an award and he has to be at the show in order to accept it, and Rachel is getting ready and is deciding between outfits and shoes and such, and they're running very late. So at a point, Ross loses his temper and yells, and Rachel pulls what I would call a passive aggressive move and gets dressed into street clothes, I guess, civilian clothes. I don't know what you would call it, but gets into comfy clothes, clearly showing that she's not going, but not directly telling him. So both of these could be avoided, although far less funny for the sake of a sitcom, by using nonviolent communication. So if you think about Ross, in the beginning, when Rachel was taken an inordinate amount of time, he could have easily used this type of method to say, hey, this is really important to me. Let's get ready. I have a need, and can you help me? So how would you do that? So his feelings, probably more around being concerned, right? So let's look at that list. Tense is a good one. Stressed out, overwhelmed, right? All of these are pretty poignant words for the situation he's in. Yeah, those are the ones I would use. So let's say overwhelmed, stressed out. Let's say stressed out. I'm stressed out. I feel like that's a pretty standard term anyway. So when I'm running late for a big event in which I am the center of attention, I feel stressed out because I have a need for, let's go back to needs, probably going to be something around the area of consistency. Consistency, order, structure, peace of mind. Peace of mind is probably your best bet here. Specifically because Ross is such a rigid dude that if he just said I need order and structure, people will probably feel it's kind of arbitrary, but there's a sense of peace of mind knowing you're going to be somewhere on time, right? So let's say that. I have a need for peace of mind. Would you consider making sure you're ready in like 5 minutes? You know, and the thing is, when you're making a request, you're not demanding things. So Rachel could easily say, no, 5 minutes is not enough time, in which case you, as the person, would have to decide whether it's more important for you to be there on time if that's going to relieve your stress. And I don't mean that in a passive aggressive, like, oh, are you going to choose this event over your girlfriend? But I mean it in a way of you have a need for structure right now. You have a need to meet, and there's a solid chance it's going to be better for you to go to this event than to wait and be stressed out and blow up, which is what ends up happening, obviously. So after he blows up, Rachel's feelings are clearly not okay. So what feelings would she use? I think hurt is probably the first one we use for almost every situation. So somewhere in that family is probably where we're going to end up. We're looking at pain here. I feel anguished. I feel bereaved. I feel hurt. Miserable, maybe. I think some of it is annoyed. So depending on the person, like if somebody were to yell at me like that, I would get hurt. I would like shut down and get hurt. I could see Rachel being far, far, far from me, getting more in the annoyed category. I feel like my partner would be the same way. And so Rachel might say, I'm aggravated, dismayed, disgruntled. Pick the words you want to do. So you're using that as your feeling word. So when I observe you raising your voice, I feel aggravated because I have a need for, and the need is going to be for respect, right? You want somebody to speak to you in a respectful way, in a way that makes you feel considered. And so all of those are going to be in this here. I have a need for nurturing. I feel like nurturing is a good word to use. We all have that need, and I feel like that's usually what's missing when people get into these types of fights. And then so what would you consider? So what would you consider the action she'd be requesting? Would you consider, honestly, in my scenario, if this were me, I would say, would you consider giving me a deadline and just trusting that I'll meet it? Or if it's another person, I might say, would you consider speaking to me in a different tone next time? I feel like that's probably more accurate than solving the actual problem, like the situation at hand. So that's a way to get that message across. The last one is between Ron and Hermione, and I'm kind of going to let you guys do that on your own because I wanted this to be a shorter video just because you have a 3-hour Marshall Rosenberg video this week. So do the Ron and Hermione one. Feel free to send it to me. I think that's probably a good idea to try it out. I think for a lot of things in which there are formulas or equations, practice is always what makes it easier. Like math, the only way you can really study math effectively is to practice it until it becomes much more sensible to you. And this is no different. So keep trying, keep doing it with things you see on TV screens, see things you see in your life, things you see at work, and you don't necessarily have to utilize it, but it's a good tool to try and practice out what feeling would I give this, what need is being missed. It helps you understand kind of the root of the conflict as opposed to what we see, which is often this like back and forth bickering, or worse, that passive aggressive, let's not talk about it, stuff it deep dark down, and then just be miserable. So feel free to look through that. That's nonviolent communication. I'm going to leave it at that, but I want to look at next week so you know what to expect. You have a process note that's due this Tuesday or this Sunday. It's a little bit longer than last time's because it includes more. You're meeting with your small group now. You had a diet exercise last week. It does cover everything from the last 2 weeks, but the actual prompt that's listed in your modules under nope, that was this week. All right. All right, so you'll notice that it has all of these things about your small group, including where your group is. So if you feel like developmentally, if you guys are still in the get to know you stage, or if you've reached chaos, if you've gotten to emptying, which would be a little bit premature, most likely all of you are still in pseudo community. Unless somebody's been real forward about starting conflict in the group, like disagreements. The key to tell if your guys out of pseudo community is if somebody or anybody can dissent with another person without there being a hullabaloo about it. So if you know you disagree with what partner X is saying and you can know you have the freedom to say that without being judged, that's how you know you're out of pseudo community. A lot of people mistake pseudo community for community because there's a calmness to it, but it's kind of a false calmness because no one feels comfortable actually dissenting with each other. So you're going to want to start to think about where your group is, what differences and similarities, what the personalities involved do to the group, and then you're going to look at your reading reflection. It's going to cover your Morrison reading and the Rosenberg one. So not the Wong et al. One that you use in your emotional intelligence, but the other two from the last 2 weeks. So it's a little bit long. This is 7 to 9 pages. Let me know if you are having issues with any of those things. We can walk through it, but that's not due until a week from today. You guys should have all gotten your progress notes back, so if you haven't, please let me know, because the Great Canvas has told me that I'm done all of them. So let me know, and we'll make sure that you have them in place. I'm going to start working on your emotional intelligence papers and get them back to you as soon as possible. You have discussion posts, but you do not have a dyad pairing this week. So when you talk about your dyad and your process note, you're going to talk about your experience last week when you did that activity. What did you do last week for your activity? You did, the speaking exercise, the 5 minutes of speaking and 5 minutes off speaking. So you'll talk about that in your process note, but for this week, you don't have a dyad exercise. You're just going to meet with your small group instead. All right, I feel like I've spoken really quickly in the last few minutes here. If you have any questions throughout the week, please let me know. I am available via email. My phone number is also listed in the professor info, and we can go through that then. All right, thanks guys. Have a great night.